start with a chant. Om Sato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness into light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. I was reading an account of one of the disciples that were with M. Mahendranath Gupta, the writer of the recorder of the Gospel of Ramakrishna, the Kathamrita. And when he was with him, he said prayer is so important, and he recommended this prayer to the devotee. So M was a direct disciple of Ramakrishna, and he's also a mentor and a teacher of Yogananda's. So he's a very, very powerful and spiritual person. So I decided I'd share that with you, since I just learned that piece of knowledge that he recommended that prayer too. It's a very ancient prayer, of course. So we're very excited to, this week is coming up, is going to be a really red letter days, 2 days for us in Las Vegas Vedanta Center. We have Swami Sarvadevanandaji coming on Wednesday and Thursday, so I want to make this announcement at the beginning of the talk in case people tune out towards the end. So it's so important that Swami Sarvadevanandaji will be here this Wednesday, the 18th, and 19th is Thursday. And for the public, for everybody, we have, we start at 6 p.m. with Maharaj will do an arti and worship service, and then we'll have bhajans by Vidurji, our own Vidur Mukherjee, and he'll do bhajans, and then Maharaj will give a talk on Wednesday, the Bhagavad Gita, Winning the Battle of Life. I think it's very appropriate considering the times we're in. That's a beautiful talk. And then on Thursday, we'll have the same schedule, more or less. We'll have 6 p.m. We'll have some, Maharaj will do the arti, and then Vidur will do some bhajans. And then at 7 p.m., Maharaj will give a talk titled Peace in This World of Turmoil, Finding Peace in This World of Turmoil. And that's also very appropriate. So I think it's a really, really wonderful time. But maybe those who don't know, Swami Sarvadevanandaji is the head of the Vedanta Society of Southern California, which includes many, many centers that are not in California. There's Texas centers. He's in charge of Washington, D.C. He's in charge of this center. He's in charge of many, many of our centers on the West Coast and all throughout the Americas. The way that the order was set up, it was a little bit kind of organic. So it just so happens that he's got responsibilities for a lot of the centers, and he's constantly traveling. In his 80s, he's a power of nature. It's amazing how he has the energy, more energy than I have, I think. And so we're so honored to have him come. So I really welcome as many of the devotees to come to the center to be with Maharaj as possible. And then if you cannot, or you're at a distance, please join us on video. We will actually have the YouTube, in our YouTube channel, we will be live streaming Maharaj from starting at the 6 p.m. RT. So you'll see everything that he does here at the center beginning at 6 p.m. So this is our public announcement for the day. So we're all excited about having Maharaj come again. He hasn't been here for 3 years. So we're really, really happy to welcome him again. So what we were doing before, last week we did, we got the first part of this talk of Sri Ramakrishna and his Lila, his divine play in Dakshineswar Kali Temple. And we may have a call in today from, that's probably after the broadcast, sadly, but from Kali Temple to give us a darshan of the actual Kali Ma Murti there in Dakshineswar. But Dakshineswar itself, and then I'll go into this for those who don't know, was a temple that was built by a vision, because of a vision of an amazing woman, Rani Rashmani, who was a widow, and she was the lowest caste of Indian society, which in those days especially meant a lot, meaning that she was really kind of couldn't do many things because of her how she was born, and that was. But she really overcame all of that. She was amazing, and he. When he passed away, he left her with considerable. Tour was this very beautiful combination of qualities. He was a very shrewd businessman, not in the harsh way, but a very astute businessman. He managed her vast properties very well. As a matter of fact, when his first wife passed away, she wanted to keep him in the family so badly, she encouraged him to marry another one of her daughters after his first wife passed away. So he stayed in the fold, so to speak. And he really created, because of him, Sri Ramakrishna, how he came into the Kali Temple. We talked about the last talk, and I won't go into that in too detail. But basically, his brother, Sri Ramakrishna's brother, Ramkumar, became the Kali Temple priest when they opened up the temple. And there was a lot of reasons why that came to be, because of not strict orthodox interpretations of things. Because Rani Rashmani was at the lowest caste, a lot of the priests wouldn't officiate in her temple. They said she was impure, and so her whole temple, which she spent a fortune on, was impure. She finally went to Ramkumar, and he gave resolution to this problem scripturally, and because he was a Brahmin and he was a teacher, and so this is how the whole Kali Temple. And the Kali Temple is a very special place because in India, a lot of the different aspects of God are worshipped separately. So you have Shiva temples, and you have Shakya temples, which is Divine Mother in different aspects. You have Krishna temples, Radha temples, you have Rama temples, you have different temples. And not always do they get along, the devotees get along in harmony. It's kind of strange. But inside of the Kali Temple itself, you had many of these aspects of God, personalities, the expressions of this divinity in the same temple. So you had Kali as the center of the whole Kali Temple. You have Shiva, which you had the Shiva, some Shiva domes along the Ganga. But you also had a Krishna and Radha temple. Krishna and his Shakti was also worshipped there. It was really kind of a beautiful community that was kind of rare. And that really spoke perfectly to the message of Ramakrishna, that all religions lead to that same realization of the divinity. You know, nobody's left out. They all can lead that way eventually. And so all paths can lead to the divine. And so this Kali Temple is really a special place, and I was blessed to be there many times, and it feels like home to me. So there's something very special there. And Sri Ramakrishna, we're going to hear today. Yes, last week we heard about how Ramakrishna came to be coming to the Kali Temple. Because Ramkumar was the priest, Ramakrishna came because his father had passed away, and he was kind of not a worldly person, so he wasn't focusing at all on making money or learning. You know, he worshipped because he was a Brahman. He worshipped and helped with the worship of because only a Brahman can worship in the home. Even in your own home, you have to have a Brahman come officiate. So he would do all those things, but not because he was making money, even though he helped his brother, because he loved the worship. And so he was now in the Kali Temple precincts because of Ramkumar. So we're going to read some more, and this is such a beautiful story of how the unfolding of Sri Ramakrishna's divine personality and the fact that, you know, what he represented and how it was integrated and how it came to be in the Kali Temple. It's very sweet. So I thought I'd read more of that. This book is called Ramakrishna and His Disciples, and it's by Christopher Ishwood, so it's written by a Westerner from California here. And so it's a very readable book in that sense for us Westerners, because he goes back into detail and explains all of the things that we wouldn't understand as Westerners that are casually mentioned about the story of Sri Ramakrishna. So it's a really wonderful book. I won't read a lot of the backstory kind of things, but I just wanted to kind of continue the story. So now we had Ramakrishna there because in the Kali Temple vicinity, because Ramkumar was there, and he had his own, they call it a toll, but it's like a little simple little place where you could teach. He was teaching Brahmins for all of Sanskrit and all of the different rituals that were required for Brahmins to learn in order to do their job of being priests. And Sri Ramakrishna would go to the Kali Temple because it was owned by a Brahmin. I mean, it wasn't owned by a Brahmin. He wouldn't himself eat there because his father was very strict. So it was a very interesting situation. So he would go back to the toll, and only on certain days come to the temple. Finally, Ramkumar mentioned, finally he started to be more comfortable there and just give up that kind of. Remember though, this is something that was really ingrained, something that was really important to a Brahmin, to be very strict on certain principles and not be deviating from them. So this is how it worked. So Sri Ramakrishna was there, but he was just casually there. He wasn't connected with the temple yet. And Mathura, again, as I mentioned him because of this, he really was instrumental in recognizing Sri Ramakrishna as something special. One of the first people who saw that. And it was because of his part of this Lila that Sri Ramakrishna became integrated into the Kali Temple. And the whole thing that happened around the world because of that sparked all the great Indian teachers to come to this West too, are because of all this. So it's really sweet. So let's read on. I'll just read from this book, and we can ask questions if there are any. So this is from Mathura. They're talking about Mathura. From Mathura's first meeting with Ramakrishna, Mathura showed his extraordinary powers of perception. He was instantly and strongly drawn to this youth, who was to be seen moving about the gardens with an air of radiant innocence, like a young child. Mathura wanted to keep Ramakrishna at Dakshineswar, so he decided to offer him a permanent position as assistant to Ramkumar. Now, understand, this would be the dream of most Brahmins, is to actually get a permanent gig at a huge temple and paid for the rest of your life kind of thing. But of course, to Ramakrishna, there's nothing. He wasn't interested in that kind of stuff at that point. But when Mathura spoke of this, by the way, Ramakrishna just started to talk, came to be placed on him. But from the time that he's in Dakshineswar, they traditionally call him Sri Ramakrishna. So, but when Mathura spoke of this, Ramkumar was not at all encouraging, because he knew now had become resigned to the idea that his young brother, Ramakrishna, would never settle down anywhere or accept any steady work. Mathura was an obstinate man, however, and accustomed to getting people to do what he wanted. He bided his time. There now came to Dakshineswar another person who was destined to form a close relationship with Ramakrishna. This was Sri Ram. Sri was the grandson of Kukshudaram, Sri Ramakrishna's father's sister, and therefore a cousin of Ramakrishna, or according to Hindu view of relationships, he was a nephew. Sri was only 4 years younger than Ramakrishna. However, the two had known each other since childhood. He was tall, handsome, and muscular, good-humored, and always ready for hard work. By nature, he was protective, and he quickly became almost an inseparable companion to Sri Ramakrishna. Sri was not a particularly spiritual youth, but he had the gift of devotion. We have seen that Ramakrishna showed from his early years a talent for modeling, making models of the gods and goddesses. Not long after Sri's arrival, he took some earth from the bed of the Ganges and modeled an image of Shiva, which he then proceeded to worship within the temple compound. Mathura happened to come by and was enormously impressed when he learned that it was Ramakrishna himself who had made the image. He asked Ramakrishna to give it to him, and he later showed it to the Rani Rashmani, the builder of the temple, who was equally impressed. Henceforth, Mathura was more than ever determined to prevent Ramakrishna from leaving Dakshineswar. Ramakrishna was quite well aware of Mathura's interest in him, and he now began to avoid Mathura. He feared a meeting between them, for he held Mathura in great respect and hated the prospect of having to say no to him, and yet he was unwilling to accept the position. Ramakrishna recognized the necessity of service for those who had families to support. But he himself, being unattached, was unwilling, as he used to say, to serve anyone but God. Friede found this attitude most unreasonable, because Friede, of course, wanted the gig himself as assistant. Unreasonable. He asked nothing better than to be employed at Dakshineswar, which he regarded as a paradise for the rest of his life. He reasoned with Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna replied that he did not want to be committed to any permanent work. Besides, if he accepted work in the Kali Temple, he would have to be responsible for the safety of the ornaments of the goddess. And this responsibility he refused to undertake. And by the way, the ornaments are sometimes quite pricey that they decorate Ma Kali and the Dakshineswar Kali Temple. So there's actually a lot of value to them. So the priest becomes responsible for them. Throughout his life, Ramakrishna instinctively shrank from involvements with jewels, gold, or other worldly valuables. Friede said at once that he would gladly be responsible for the ornaments. So Ramakrishna allowed himself to be persuaded, and thus it was that finally it settled. Ramakrishna and Friede became assistants to Ramakumar in the Kali Temple. Ramakrishna had to dress the image and prepare it for worship. Friede had to look after the ornaments. That same year, on the day after the celebration of Sri Krishna's birthday, there was an accident in the Radhakanta temple. This is the temple of Krishna and Radha. The priest of the temple, as we have seen, Shadranath, the brother of Malina, nothing important for us. According to custom, the images of Krishna and Radha were removed from the shrine after the worship was over and placed in beds in another room. The idea that the deity had to rest after being worshipped is current in many parts of the world. In the cathedrals of some Catholic countries, the Blessed Virgin Mary is also, the image is also removed. On this occasion, as Shadranath was carrying the image of Krishna back to the bedchamber, he slipped in some water which had been spilled on the marble floor and fell. The leg of the image was broken off, Krishna. The accident caused a commotion. It was considered unlucky and an evil omen, and Shadranath was immediately dismissed for his carelessness. The pundits were called together to decide what should be done next. They ruled that a broken image could not be worshipped. Another image must be made and the old one thrown into the Ganges. But the Rani was unwilling to throw away an image which she had once begun to worship. At Mathura's suggestion, she consulted Ramakrishna, of whom they now both had such high opinion that they already called him he being a youth not out of his teens, he was still a teenager, father. They called him father. Before replying to the question, Ramakrishna pondered over it deeply and went into an ecstatic spiritual mood. He then said, if one of the Rani's son-in-laws were to break a leg, would she throw him away and put someone else in his place? Wouldn't she rather have him cured by a doctor? Let it be the same in this case. Mend the image and worship it as before. Some of the pundits were shocked by this demonstration of divinely inspired common sense, but the Rani and Mathura were delighted. Ramakrishna mended the image himself, so skillfully that no one thereafter was able to see the break in the limb. That later, when Ramakrishna was asked by a somewhat stupid landowner, sir, is it true that the Krishna of Dakshineswar had been broken? He replied scornfully, can he who is the indivisible whole be broken? A fine idea. Ramkumar's anxieties were now put to rest. Ramakrishna appeared to be settling down in a respectable position. Ramkumar was relieved at this, for he was now in his 50s and his health was poor. He had grown old before his time. Ramkumar began to let Ramakrishna perform the worship in the Kali temple while he himself performed the worship of Krishna and Radha. Perhaps he did this because he wanted to prepare Ramakrishna to take over his duties as soon as possible. Perhaps he had foreseen, as he had foreseen of others, foreseen his own death. He died the next year quite suddenly at a place just outside Calcutta, to which he had been called for some urgent business. This was in 1856. So this is quite interesting because, again, a broken image would never normally be worshipped. I was really blessed. The first time I went to Kali Temple, or perhaps it was the second or third visit, when I became acquainted with one of the priests there. He actually let me in This was many years ago when it was more free to walk around there in 1990, I think, something like that, 91. And he took me into the Radhakanta temple and let me look at the image closely to where the image was broken and repaired. So it was such an honor to just be that close to this whole story. And so, of course, I had read about it before, but then when I was there to actually see the image and see where the hands of Ramakrishna himself fixed that image, and that it was so, and it was such a perfect fix. You could barely see a line. And this is many, many years later. So it was such an honor and such a beautiful thing to be a part of this story, to see it firsthand. So now we'll continue, because I wanted to kind of show how Ramakrishna, how this whole temple became really a part of this story now. Thus it was, at the age of 20, Ramakrishna suffered a second great bereavement. So the first one was his father, who passed away when he was like 16, and then his brother passed away. Ramkumar had been even more than an elder brother to him. He had stood, especially during his past 4 years, in the place of Ramakrishna's father. The young man's mind now turned altogether away from the world and its impermanence, towards the one resource which he believed to be unfailing. He became passionately resolved to obtain the vision of Kali, the Divine Mother, to know the reality within the image he worshipped daily in the shrine. Obsessed by the love he felt for Kali, by his desire to see her, he spent every moment that he could in the temple, and when its doors had to be closed according to custom at midday and at night, he avoided the company of others and wandered off alone into the jungle thickets, which covered the northern end of the temple property at that time. Fride now became concerned, for he saw that Ramakrishna was neither sleeping nor eating sufficiently, and he knew that his uncle was in the habit of going off into the jungle, a thing which nobody else at Dakshineswar would willingly do, especially at night. Since the place had formerly been a graveyard, you might expect to meet ghosts there. One night, the devoted youth put aside his own fears and followed Ramakrishna at a distance. In order to scare him into turning back, Fride threw some pebbles and gravel after him. They fell around Ramakrishna, who ignored them and went into the thicket. The next day, Fride asked his uncle outright what he had been doing in such a sinister spot in the middle of the night. Ramakrishna then explained to him that an amalaki tree, which bears the astringent plum-like fruit, grew there, and that according to the scriptures, anyone who meditates beneath the amalaki will have its dearest wish fulfilled. Ramakrishna was meditating under the tree in order to get a vision of Kali. I should mention to those who are not familiar with Kali, Kali is a representation of the Divine Mother of Shakti, which is all creation. So there's light and dark. There's positive and what we would consider negative aspects to Kali image. So you have a sword dripping with blood. You have a severed head, and those are 2 arms. And those are the 2 more concerning arms to us. But the other 2 arms are allaying fears and giving blessings. So it's kind of the whole nature in one image. And she's dancing above the prostrate body of Shiva, which is the awareness, the substratum of awareness that is underlying all of creation. And so Shiva is the non-active force of awareness. And so it's perfectly represented by those who may not be able to read or understand. They can see an image that can represent such profound principles. So Kali Ma has these negative aspects and horrible aspects, as well as these beneficent, beautiful ones. And to her devotees, she's the mother. She saves us, she rescues us, she loves us, she's there to bring us to liberation and bring us from bondage. So this is the idea of Kali to those who are more Western and don't know. The Indian devotees know very well what Kali Ma is. So on another occasion, Fride became increasingly distressed by his uncle's austerities. Being himself temperamentally unable to understand this kind of devotional obsession, he felt that Ramakrishna was going beyond the bounds of propriety and even sanity, and his feeling was shared to some extent by almost everybody at Dakshineswar. Their head priest was taking his religion more seriously than they thought decent. Ramakrishna replied calmly that this was the right way to meditate. Man labors from his birth under the 8 forms of bondage, he told reading. They are hatred, shame, fear, doubt, aversion, self-righteousness, pride in one's lineage, and pride in one's caste status. All of these forms of bondage tie man's mind down to the worldly thoughts and desires and prevent him from raising his mind to spiritual things. The sacred thread reminds a man that he belongs to the highest class, that of the Brahmins. Therefore, it makes him proud of his birth. And so it must be discarded along with every other pretension, possession, desire, and aversion before one can approach the mother of meditation. And that's really profound and beautiful. Literalness was the characteristic of Sri Ramakrishna. He was never content with a merely mental renunciation. The thought must be accompanied by a deed, just that he had discarded all things on other occasions to perform acts of renunciation and self-mortification. So, for example, in order to humble his caste pride, he cleaned out the privy with his own hands in order to affirm this belief that the divine was present in all beings. That means the toilet. And the Indian toilets are Indian toilets. I don't want to go into detail, but he actually did that. And at the time, his hair was very long. And he actually used it to kind of help clean the privy. Yeah. Sri Ramakrishna was now entering upon the phase of life in which was characterized by sadhana, the period of spiritual discipline. All the great religious teachers have passed through such a phase. One need only instance the wanderings and austerities of Buddha and those years of Christ's early manhood, which are passed over in the gospel narrative. The Orthodox Hindu view is that an incarnation of God, which Sri Ramakrishna is considered, is at all times fully conscious of his divinity. So whatever he does is only kind of a play acting. But Sri Ramakrishna's disciple Sardananda does not altogether agree with this view. According to Sardananda, the avatar's sufferings and moments of weakness are not simulated. Coming into the world with absolute knowledge of the reality, he assumes the ignorance and the weakness of ordinary men in order to be an example to others by transcending them. Ramakrishna was accustomed to teach that the whole purpose of sadhana was to become able to see Brahman in all things, everywhere. Sadhana ultimately is the effort to know the universal cause beyond time and space. We ordinary mortals only see multiplicity of beings, not the one eternal substratum. We see multiplicity instead of the unity because we are ignorant. We are ignorant because we are within Maya, the web of seeming, which has to be put forth by the power of Brahman. This ignorance should not be thought of as an individual delusion. It is shared by all who are within Maya. That is why our perceptions are roughly identical. If I think I see a table, then so do you. Our ignorance consists of being unable to see that the table is essentially Brahman, and that nothing but Brahman exists. But through this ignorance is shared, though this ignorance is shared, any one of us can individually escape from it and reach freedom. So we'll continue. It is said that there are 2 main paths of sadhana, the path of discrimination and the path of devotion. Since the knowledge that life ends in death has always been common to mankind, it is probable that discrimination was practiced before devotion. For discrimination consists in rejecting all that is impermanent in order to come by at last to the process of elimination to the permanent substratum, the reality. The path of devotion, on the other hand, is described by saying this, because the devotee is constantly reminding himself that he is everywhere in the presence of Brahman. That in saying this, he is not disagreeing with the man of discrimination. He does not worship phenomena as phenomena. He worships the reality behind the phenomena. As the months of this year in 1856 went by, Ramakrishna's spiritual efforts became more and more intense. Addressing the image of Kali in the temple, he exclaimed piteously, Mother, you showed yourself to Ramprasad and other devotees in the past. Why won't you show yourself to me? Why won't you grant my prayer? I've been praying to you so long, and he wept bitterly. Oh, what days of suffering I went through, Ramakrishna used to say, as he recalled this period after years. You can't imagine the agony of my separation from Mother, but that was only natural. Suppose there's a bag of gold in a room, and a thief is in the next room, with only a thin partition in between. Can a thief sleep at night in peace? Won't he try to burst through the wall and get to the gold? That was the state I was in. I knew Mother was there, quite close to me. How could I want anything else? She is infinite happiness. Beside her, all the world's wealth is nothing. Often before the shrine, he became absorbed and stopped the performance of the ritual, sitting motionless for hours at a time. Because of this, some of the temple officials became impatient with him. Others laughed at him for a half-crazy fool. But Mathur was impressed, and he told the Rani, "We have got a wonderful devotee for the worship of our goddess. Very soon he will awaken her." Before long, Mathur was proved right. This is how Ramakrishna describes the experience. There was an unbearable pain in my heart because I couldn't get a vision of Mother. Just as a man wrings out a towel with all his strength to get the water out of it, so I felt as if my heart and mind were being wrung out. I began to think I should never see Mother. I was dying of despair. In my agony, I said to myself, what's the use of living this life? Suddenly, my eyes fell on the sword that hangs in the temple. I decided to end my life with it, then and there. Like a madman, I ran to it and seized it. And then I had a marvelous vision of the Mother and fell down unconscious. It was as if houses, doors, temples, and everything else vanished altogether, as if there was nothing anywhere. And what I saw was an infinite shoreless sea of light, a sea that was consciousness. However far and whatever direction I looked, I saw shining waves, one after another, coming towards me. They were raging and storming upon me with great speed. Very soon they were upon me. They made me sink down into an unknown depths. I panted and struggled and lost consciousness. It is not quite clear from Ramakrishna's narrative whether or not he actually saw the form of the Mother Kali in the midst of this vision of shining consciousness. But it would seem that he did, because the first words that he uttered on coming to himself were "Mother, Mother." After this vision, Ramakrishna was so absorbed that he often was unable to perform the temple worship at all. Fride had to do it for him. Fride was so disturbed by the mental condition of his uncle that he called in a doctor to treat him. It would be interesting to know what form the treatment took. Needless to say, it was quite ineffectual. On the days when Ramakrishna was able to perform the worship, a strange phenomena would occur. No sooner had I sat down to meditate, he later recalled, than I heard clattering sounds in the joints of my body and limbs. They began in my legs. It was as if someone inside me had keys and was locking me up joint by joint, turning the keys. I had no power to move my body or change my posture, even slightly. I couldn't stop meditating, or go anywhere else, or do anything else I wanted. I was forced, as it were, to sit there in the same posture until my joints began clattering again and were unlocked, beginning at the neck this time and ending with my legs. When I sat and meditated, I had at first a vision of particles of light like swarming fireflies. Sometimes I saw masses of light covering everything on all sides like a mist. At other times I saw how everything was pervaded by light, by bright waves of light, like molten silver. I didn't understand what I saw, nor did I know if it was good or bad to be having these visions. So I prayed anxiously to Mother, I don't understand what's happening to me. Please teach me yourself how to know you, Mother. If you don't teach me, who will? In such statements, we hear the artless accents of Ramakrishna, and they convey more vividly than any words of his contemporaries the personality he was more and more completely assuming, that of a child of the Divine Mother. Childlike, he now obeyed the will of the Mother in everything. No matter how trivial, he was utterly careless of the world, what the world might think of his behavior. And now he had begun to see the Mother frequently. He saw her within the temple and outside it, without any longer having to make an effort of will in his meditation. He no longer saw an image in the temple, but the form of the mother herself. Later, he described how I put the palm of my hand near her nostrils and felt the mother was actually breathing. I had watched very closely, but I could never see her shadow in the temple wall in the light of the lamp at night. I used to hear from my room how mother ran upstairs, as merry as a little girl, with her anklets jingling. I wanted to see that I wanted to be sure that she'd really done this. So I went outside, and there she was, standing on the veranda of the second floor of the temple, with her hair flying. Sometimes she looked like towards Calcutta, and sometimes toward the Ganges. Fride has left us a description of his relations with Ramakrishna at the time, and it was Uncle's astonishing behavior. You felt awestruck when you entered the Kali Temple in those days, even when Uncle wasn't there, and much more so when he was. Yet I couldn't resist the temptation of seeing how he acted at the time of the worship. As long as I was actually watching him, my heart was full of reverence and devotion. But when I came out of the temple, I began to have doubts and asking myself, has Uncle really gone mad? Why else would he do such terrible things during the worship? I was afraid that the Rani and Mathur Babu would say that they came to hear of it, but Uncle never worried. He didn't venture to speak to him much any longer. My mouth was closed by fear that I can't describe. I felt that there was some kind of barrier between us, so I just looked after him in silence as best I could, but I was afraid he'd make a scene someday. Fride's fears were certainly justified. I saw how Uncle's chest and eyes were always red, like those of a drunkard. He'd get up reeling from the worshiper's seat, climb onto the altar, and caress the Divine Mother, chuckling her affectionately under the skin, putting his hand under the chin. He began singing, laughing, joking, and talking with her, or sometimes he'd catch hold of her hands and dance. I saw how when he was offering cooked food to the Divine Mother, he'd suddenly get up and take a morsel of rice and curry from the plate in his hand and touch it to Mother's mouth and say, "Eat, Mother, do eat it." Then maybe he'd say, "You want me to eat it?" Then he would, "And then you'll eat some afterwards?" "All right, I'm eating it now." He'd then take some of it himself and put the rest to her lips again, saying, "Now I've had some, now you eat." One day at the time of the food offering, Uncle saw a cat. It had come into the temple mewing. He fed it with the food which was offered to the Divine Mother. "Will you take it, Mother?" he said to the cat. The appalling power that makes and unmakes the universe may be also known in the aspects of an indulgent mother who can laugh with the laugh and pester the favors of the child. So this gives a little indication that when you're really with somebody that has divine realization or is going through these experiences, it must have been really hard for average people to understand what was actually happening. Because when somebody's being starts to see the divine in everything and everywhere, they become utterly unconcerned about their body. They might sit there for months, and people would actually have to force them to eat. And it's shown that even in Ramakrishna's case, he went into samadhi for many months. And if one of the priests, a wandering sadhu actually saw him and realized what state he was in and forced some food in his mouth and beat his body so he'd swallow it, that's the only way the body was safe. And of course, when they see God and everything, offering food that is meant for the worship of the Mother of the Universe to a cat is the biggest blasphemy that you can do in the Hindu temple, because it's considered unclean, and then you can't offer it. Even if you touch it, you can't offer it to the Mother. So this is a very beautiful explanation. I just wanted to share that with some of the devotees, so that I thought it was really sweet to read how this whole thing came about. And the more you dive into Sri Ramakrishna's life from the time he was very young until he became the person who taught the world, more or less, it's really sweet and beautiful, and allows us to really kind of open our heart to this whole process of divine sadhana. And of course, not everybody is going to be devoted to the form of Divine Mother and Kali. It could be any form of worship and meditation and all these types of things. But the surrender is the same, I think. So man, why don't we do this? It's a beautiful, beautiful story. I thought maybe we'd chant a little bit. And in the book there, it's "Will that they come to me, Ma?" which is exactly a song about what Ramakrishna was going through. So it seems to be the perfect song to sing today. And it's a song by Ramprasad, who Ramakrishna himself sang. And Ramprasad was one of the Bengal's great saints who wrote these beautiful songs of Mother, Divine Mother, and his devotion and his realization of Divine Mother. So we'll sing that. And then I thought maybe what we could do is we could have a little bit of a meditation. And we'll describe how to do that meditation here after we sing to Divine Mother. So will that day come to me, Ma? Will that day come to me, Ma? Will that day come to me, Ma? When, saying, Mother dear, my eyes will flow tears. When, saying, Mother dear, my eyes will flow tears. Wisdom's lotus will blossom forth, darkness will steal away. Wisdom's lotus will blossom forth, darkness will steal away. Steal away, steal away, steal away, Ma, steal away. Steal away, steal away, steal away, Ma, steal away. Sri Ramakrishna said, Divine Mother, everywhere stay. Sri Ramakrishna said, My Mother, everywhere stays. Blind eyes see the mark hiding everywhere. Blind eyes see the mark hiding everywhere. Will that day come to me, Ma? Will that day come to me, Ma? When, saying, Mother dear, my eyes will flow tears. When, saying, Mother dear, my eyes will flow tears. Heart's lotus will blossom forth, darkness will steal away. Heart's lotus will blossom forth, darkness will steal away. Steal away, steal away, steal away, Ma, steal away. Steal away, steal away, steal away, Ma, steal away. 1,000 Vedas to declare, Divine Mother's everywhere. 1,000 Vedas to declare, my Mother's everywhere. Sri Ramakrishna said, Divine Mother, everywhere stay. Sri Ramakrishna said, My Mother, everywhere stay. Blind eyes see the mark hiding everywhere. Blind eyes see the mark hiding everywhere. Will that day come to me, Ma? Will that day come to me, Ma? When, saying, Mother dear, my eyes will flow tears. When, saying, Mother dear, my eyes will flow tears. Wisdom's lotus will blossom forth, darkness will steal away. Heart's lotus will blossom forth, darkness will steal away. Steal away, steal away, steal away, Ma, is to declare divine mothers everywhere. 1,000 ways to declare my mothers everywhere. Sri Ramakrishna says, divine mother everywhere stands. Sri Ramakrishna says, my mother everywhere stands. Blind eyes see the mom hiding everywhere. Blind men see the mom hiding everywhere. Blind men see the mom hiding everywhere. I thought now we could do a little meditation, and we'll do the meditation of Soham. The Yoga Sutras say that if you do the step-by-step ideal of yoga, you can still the mind and it can become one-pointed and you can focus that on the Divine Mother solely. And so if we focus the mind on this practice, this technique, it actually makes it much easier. And it's also a way to get to that state of just the awareness, consciousness, where we can actually just be a witness of all the drama, go deep and deep into that witness consciousness. So it can be a concentration exercise, and it can also be a deep exercise. So we're going to use pranayama, which is the breath is tied to the prana of the body. The prana is that which controls and enlivens the body. It's the subtle energy, not the physical, that's responsible for everything. Our breathing, our heartbeats, our circulation, the whole body, feeling, sensations, touch, hearing, sound, sight. All these things are because prana is going outward into the world. The prana is flowing. If we can reverse the prana going inward into those inner centers that Sri Ramakrishna talks about. Wisdom's lotus is the one at the point between the eyebrows. The heart's lotus is here. So in the song it talks about the hinsita, but the 7 centers of energy in the body. If the energy is reversed, the prana is reversed, it goes into the spine and up the spine. Ramakrishna describes how he was awakened by that in the opening of the chakras and the piercing of the energy into the spine. So the idea is that if we just do this pranayama, we can really accomplish a lot. So what we'll do is we're going to inhale and exhale 3 times, but we're going to inhale through the nose like this. 1 short and 1 long inhalation. That's the inhalation. Exhalation is the opposite, but through the mouth. 1 short and 1 long. So it's in and out. We're going to do that 3 times. And then after the 3rd time, all we're going to do is just let the breath be and then observe it. Don't control it in any way. Just watch and see the body breathe itself. And then when the body, just let the breath stay out as long as it wants to. When the breath is ready to come back in, we mentally chant, so. And when the breath just, it stays still, just watch it and observe and feel the peace. And when it wants to exhale, let it exhale, and you see it, and you chant mentally, hum. So hum, I am he, I am he. It's the declaration of the actual state of awareness that is true. So it's so hum, inhale, so exhale, hum, so hum. It's a very beautiful technique, and you can use this anytime when you're driving, or not driving perhaps, when you're riding in a car or in a plane, or just need to mellow out sometime. It's beautiful, and you can do this anywhere. So again, it's mentally so hum. So we'll do the breathing 3 times, and the 3rd time, just let the breath go out, and just then when it wants to come in by itself, mentally chant so. And when it wants to go out, hum, so hum, and just we'll sit there. We'll just do that for a short period of time, okay? So we'll do the inhalation and exhalation. So ready? Here we go. Ready? Inhale. And tense the whole body. Tense the whole body. Hold. Hold. Exhale. Inhale. Tense the whole body. Hold the tension. Exhale, release the tension. Inhale again, hold the tension of the whole body. Hold the tension. Exhale and release it. Now let the body, the breath just be relaxed. And when the breath comes in, so teach it so. When it wants to go out, so. any questions or comments or things that you want to know about anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious because I'm new to this, and I was just wondering what there was something mentioned in the book about um, this, I can't pronounce his name.
Ramakrishna.
Yeah, with him, Jesus, and Buddha, and I was just wondering, well, Jesus, I remember hearing that Jesus went to India to study and to, meditate. Did Buddha also go and
Well,
study?
Buddha was in India. That's where he was born. And there's a long written tradition of his sadhana. They say he performed the most strenuous austerities of not eating and starving the body and sitting in meditation for hours and hours, days and days in the forest. And only finally when he ate, then he gained enlightenment. So when he finally gave himself through the dog bone, as they say, there's a beautiful stories of Buddha's sadhana. It's bad, but he was, yeah.
So they all gained enlightenment or became one with God, so to speak. I mean,
they realized their oneness with God,
God.
because the idea is that everybody in their core is a part of God, because they're all an expression of God. We just don't realize it. We're wandering around like in a dark room trying to figure out how to get out, right? But yeah, the idea of a enlightened or incarnation of God, like all of those are revered in India as, is that they came to show us what we are.
Wow.
There's a beautiful story of and Swami Vivekananda used to tell it. There was a lion that was a female lion that was pregnant, and it was hunting, and it was going into a herd of sheep to kill them. And when it jumped into the herd of sheep, it died and gave birth and then died. So the cub itself was born into a flock of sheep, and it didn't. So it grew up thinking that it was a sheep. So it used to run around bleating and running away and acting just like a sheep would do it. And then one day a lion came around and saw this tiger sheep in this thing, and he said, "This is crazy." So he ran and grabbed the cub. Well, now it was a lion actually, but it was running around like a sheep, and he was bleeding, like, "Oh no!" And he said, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Don't you realize who you are?" And he said, "Look, you are the same as me." And he grabbed him, pulled him to the riverbank, and showed his face. That, "Look, your face is the same as mine." And then he took some meat and thrust it into his mouth, and because it wasn't used to eating meat, he said, "See, you have taste for blood, for meat, just like I do." So he compared this to our condition, where we're born into this world thinking that we're helpless and mortal, and that the guru is like the lion who sees us in this condition and comes and grabs us and shows our own true image in the reflection, and then gives us the taste for a spiritual, divine sustenance, which is the awareness, the unlimited awareness that we are. This is basically the same kind of theory, kind of a similar kind of thing.
So this is not unique to Christianity. It's popping up
in all of it's true. That's why it's beautiful when people go from their own traditions, whatever it may be, Islam or Christianity or Judaism, and they start seeing the traditions that are also in other religions. There's a lot of commonalities there, actually. And of Jesus and Krishna, like Krishna and Jesus, there was some tremendous commonalities. Like Krishna was also kind of hunted by Kamsa, so it was the same as Jesus was hunted by Herod. And so he was actually born and given to a different family, and they brought him up, and so he was brought up as a cowherd, basically a shepherd. But he was a prince. He was actually a prince in the real sense too. And so there was different aspects of his life. So there's a lot of commonalities of where Jesus was moved to Egypt to be safe from the slaughter of the innocents as they had in Christianity, and then he came back to be baptized by John the Baptist and so on. But this was after, of course, he had studied in India and all these places. But those weren't recounted in the Gospels because it would make him look like an ordinary person instead of.
We've never heard of that. Only
there's-
studying this have I heard about.
Yeah, and there's nothing mentioned about all those years in his life. They didn't even say when he grew up to be a great guy, it was just totally.
All of a sudden, he's an adult.
But there are written records that were just suppressed, obviously, so.
Interesting.
But it's so beautiful. That's why studying all the different various traditions are really nice. And if you do it without fanaticism of blinders, you really get to see the commonalities and things instead of differences. And, there's always an internal and an external part to religions. There's an esoteric and exoteric. The esoteric is the internal side, like Christianity, you have the Essene side, or you have, the Gnostic teachings of Christianity, which were the more of this yogic internal
That was
teachings that was lost or suppressed, and the exoteric kind of went out, and so anything that was related to that kind of thing was exorcised from the records, as was reincarnation, which was actually accepted in Judaism and in Christianity, and was exorcised out of it, because even in the Bible it talks about Isha and Ilya, and that when John the Baptist, they were shown to be that it was, a reincarnation of John the Baptist was a reincarnation of Elias. So, and it's there, but kind of briefly mentioned, which is kind of an interesting situation. So Jesus and John the Baptist were reincarnated as the old prophets that were in the Bible, and it says it's basically, that they knew,
And then this is maybe a silly question, but is, because I'm not, just learning, the mother God, the one that.
Divine Mother.
Yes, would that be the equivalent of like the Christian and Judaism God, like in the Western, they believe in like a male, like creator of the universe, is that like a female? Is that the same thing?
It's a little different in a sense, but Christianity has its own, like Mother Mary, Mother of God.
Oh, I see.
So going to the mother in that sense is similar, but Kali is actually it is a little different. You have Brahman, which is it's like God the Father in that sense, where it's the unmanifest, the awareness of it underlying everything, the eternal awareness, eternal existence, consciousness, and bliss. So existence forever, without ending or beginning, consciousness without ending or beginning, and bliss, cosmic bliss. And then you have the creative aspect, which is Shakti, which is always depicted as a female god. So it's a consort. So you have, in different aspects of the goddess of Shakti, you have Kali. Kali is one. But you also have Durga Ma, which is the protectrix. So she's protecting us. She's on the lion with the sword. You have Lakshmi Ma, which is the goddess of fortune and sustenance, sustaining us. Then you have Saraswati, who is the goddess of wisdom and arts and expression. So these are the different expressions of Shakti, of creation, of external creation of this Brahman. So in Christianity, you would kind of have to say that God the Father is the transcendent image or the transcendent aspect of God. And God the Son, the Christ, would be the God inside of creation. That's why it says, without Christ, not anything was made. Through Christ, everything was made. In the Bible, it talks about that. So the Christ consciousness is the reflected image of that in this created universe. So they don't have it as a female. There used to be. But again, a lot of the female deities and all of those, the Christian and the Judaism as well, were eliminated from, it became, all divine aspects of female divinity were removed from those religions very early, because it was more of a male-dominated patriarchy, which is sad. That's why it's so beautiful to see in India, at least in the remnants of what is there, the female divinity is really beautiful, that it's still there. And it gives such a beautiful image to women, because, otherwise you're just seeing God as God and as a male, and it makes you feel like a second-class citizen immediately, and then, you're kind of have all the restrictions of a lot of the Abrahamic religions.
Yes.
And so you're supposed to not be talking, you're not in charge of anything, you're supposed to be submissive and all these kind of things. But in Hinduism, the goddess is everything. She's the creatrix. She's in charge of wisdom. It's beautiful. That doesn't relate to reality in some cases. But you have like the Rani Rashmani who created the Temple of Kali, even though she was the lowest caste of India. In India, she was also very wealthy. She rose above it. She became this bad, this amazing woman that was so powerful. She even took on the English government and won. She was really an amazing force of nature.
In the 1800s, no.
Mm-hmm. When women were definitely
Anywhere.
yeah, a whole different world. So it's so beautiful, and obviously all of these things were prevalent and true in ancient history before recorded time. There was a whole different aspect of reality, and when the Dark Age, there's a cycle of the world, and sometimes history there's like a cyclical high ages and dark ages, and it goes around at 24,000 year cycles. And so in the highest age, which is 10,500 BC, you had awareness of divinity, of what was more kind of normal for this world, and people could express divine qualities, and there was a lot of beautiful things that was expressed. As the world came into a lower cycle, all of those things were slowly forgotten. And so a lot of these traditions of religions and symbolism came to, but they exorcised a lot of things as things went on. And more as the Dark Ages got further down that 12,000 year cycle from the top of the Golden Age to the Dark Age, it became less, a lot of things that really suppressed. Even out of Christianity, the Essene and the Gnostic aspects were this beautiful internal. If you read their scriptures that were hidden away in caves, it's very enlightened. It's very beautiful. Same thing with the Sufis in Islam. The Sufis are very like yoga. It's a connection directly with God. You don't need an intermediary. This is the biggest thing. If you have an internal path to God, that means God is residing in you.
Yes. Then
the religious figure, the church or the priest, have no power over you. So as soon as they don't want that. So they had to repress that truth so they could contain power, and they could have power over you and collect money and make you subservient, and you can only get to God through them. So you can only get to God through them, through the church, and this is basically what happened. It was all power, it was all money, it was all control. So and that's what's beautiful is now that it's coming. India was a time capsule of all of these truths for all the rest of the world.
And they still have those traditions where that's beautiful.
But it wasn't known widely until Ramakrishna sent Vivekananda to the West. Even in India, these deeper truths weren't always understood. Locked away into the forests and the caves, and they were disseminated. When Ramakrishna basically brought up Vivekananda, and of course Vivekananda was a great spiritual giant when he was born, he said that I'm not keeping anything secret. If you tell me, if I learn something, I'm going to spread it to everybody. I'm not holding anything back.
Yeah.
So he not only spread it in India, then he came to America, and he taught the highest truths in America. He didn't teach about Ramakrishna and worshiping anybody. He talked about the Vedanta, the Vedas, and Advaita Vedanta, which is non-dualism. The Upanishads, all of the highest truths which were secret in India. He came to the West, to the highest, like in Harvard, he was giving lectures. In England, he was giving lectures to Cambridge, and I think it was Cambridge. So some of the, really the astute scholars of religious, of religion, and it was accepted widely and wildly that way in America and England. So when he came back to India, all of a sudden they go, oh my gosh, I guess the stuff we got is pretty good.
Yeah.
Because they had been taught that, because of course they were conquered by England, and the missionaries were telling them that this was all, their stuff was no good, they were heathens, and only Christ is the way, the usual stuff. So it was really an amazing thing, and even to this day it's still played out. It's beautiful. So I don't know if that's our call. But listen, thank you all so much. We really appreciate you coming. live and also coming online. And please come to see Swami Sarvadevanandaji. He is so amazing. We're so blessed to have him coming here. And he's going to give talks that will go deeply into these kind of subjects again. And of course, he's the head. He's the man. I'm just a simple little guy who just likes to be around this beautiful people.
Great, Jeff. This is just fantastic.
People are really the real deal. So please come. Please come to Wednesday and Thursday to see Maharaj. Thank you all online, and thank you all here. And we'll see you on Wednesday and Thursday for Maharaj. Thank you all.
I'm gonna try to go.
Uh-oh. You know what?
It didn't record or did?
No,
Oh.
I don't. I think it somehow ended early.
Oh, shoot.
Holy cow. Huh. I don't know how much I think that what must have happened was the internet must have gone down.
Oh, that happens.
Because we have a
Do you
Wi-Fi.
have Cox internet?
No,
It's like
I have
worst.
the, yeah, sadly, I have the, there was some times when people were here, but not. Huh. What's going on
Gosh, thank you, Jeff. I'm learning a lot.
here?
And it's funny because I've been meditating. I'm doing the self-realization, going through the steps and everything like that. But I grew up Christian and just struggled so much with spirituality. It's just talk about like kind of negative things when we're little and stuff like that. And so I just came to a place where I just meditated. Every day I meditate and I say, God, help me to release my old beliefs about you, God, about myself.
Oh,